You just got the notice about leave or get out, or
Yeah,
got it?
yeah. Leave or got it. Like, okay, I got it. I'm good.
Well, welcome to the August session of the DC Buzz. I have with me Tanya Webb, who was a graduate of Full Sail with me in the film program. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right. I know Jessica, who probably knows as much as anybody else does, having stayed with me for the entire program. I started in as a career change, and I had a degree in journalism, decided I needed to make some use of it, and literally sold my house, quit my job, and went back to school, and ultimately decided it was actually long roundabout way, but found out that when I thought I was going to go to documentary work, that wasn't the best fit for me. And I fell into the art department and loved it. So at this point, I am now a buyer for Set Deck, although I can work and have worked as a coordinator for Set Deck as well. But I'm a buyer here in Atlanta. I've been working here 5 years now.
Very cool. So what drew you from film from your career change? You
drew me into film?
Drew you into film. You've always told me about your journalism degree. What got you into this journalism degree all the way back?
Well, all the way back.
Let's start at the beginning.
When I was getting my journalism degree, I actually wanted to do field reporting. And this was before the days of digital. And I wanted to do field reporting, and that was not a career path that women got to be in. So my thought was always that I would return to school at some point, get a master's in probably photojournalism, and take that path in order to get into my preferred part of journalism, which was to work as field reporter. Unfortunately, it's really hard to work for free in this world and still eat and live indoors. So I just never gathered up enough time and money to go back to school until I figured that I hated what I was doing. I was at a point in my life where I worked a lot of other jobs, some of them great, some of them really, really not so great. And it was time that I figured out a path that I actually enjoyed. So when I decided to go back to Full Sail, it was for the technical knowledge, because things had changed so much from pre-digital to the world now. And I thought that I would go into camera work, because that was originally where I wanted to go. It was field reporting. And it ended up that there's a split between the person who's creative doesn't really handle the camera, and the person who handles the camera doesn't have the creative input. And although I would still love to do some documentary work, I decided that probably was not my most creative path and wouldn't give me the most, kind of use of a skill set, I suppose. And I got into the art department and realized that my very eclectic job history and life had made me a really good fit for Set Deck, for being able to say, oh, you need to do a cafe in Paris? Yeah, I can do that. You need a grocery store, you need a pharmacy, you need a hospital, you need a morgue. I can do those things. And I know a lot of those worlds, or a little bit about a lot of them. So it just ended up being a good fit, but I didn't realize there was such a job as buyer when I was there. I thought I would go into set dressing. And then when I moved into Atlanta, I started working as a PA for a full year with Tyler Perry Studios. And I worked in Set Deck, and I started realizing that the buyer position was actually kind of cool. And it puts my journalism degree to work, because I do a lot of research, and I spent a lot of time kind of doing what I call going down the rabbit hole when I try to find something that I don't know much about. And it just ended up being a really good fit. And I worked with a decorator who was very open to helping me get into the union. And so I got into the union at the 1 year mark, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Very cool. So a
Yeah,
lot
of people think, a lot of people think that buying is like I spend all my time at Macy's, and no, no.
You obviously do spend a lot of time at Macy's sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes, yes.
What's been like your best project that you've worked on? Because we've got all these sets with these beautiful everything, like the hotel rooms and the hospitals that are clean and neat. And then you've got, and the curtains. Like, here, tell me about this set.
This set was a quick set that the decorator didn't really have time to. It was kind of like an add-on set. And he came to me and he said, okay, I'm putting furniture in this office. You need to get everything else for it. And you have like a day to do it. I went, okay. And a lot of it is out of the warehouse. Some of it was rented, but this is an attorney's office. He was supposed to be a family attorney. This was part of the Oval, and it was one at Tyler Perry Studios. So it's supposed to be a family attorney, kind of family friendly. There are some, I like to do what we call life layer. So if the bottom right corner picture has the sofa there, that's where he crashes when he's working too long. So there's stacks of books there and law books and pens and papers and a workout bag with dirty sneakers and a water bottle. And it's just kind of like, he's a working attorney. He's not a high paid, he's a family advocate attorney is what this attorney does. And then we didn't have any time to rent or print or do anything with artwork. So I reached into my photo files, which I have rather extensive ones, and all of the photos on the walls are mine, which was also kind of fun to do. We printed them, I signed a release, and they're up on the walls. But yeah, I decorated that. I got everything in and sort of told the dressers where to dress everything, and that is how the office ended up. So all of the photos are of the set itself, and then the picture in the center is how it plays on screen.
That's neat. That's really cool that you get to see all of your artwork on screen, because you took all those pictures. So those are yours.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Actually, Jessica, you were there when I took the one of the building that's over the couch.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that.
That was when we were working our way through the alphabet in photography class.
Yeah, that's right. That's all the way back in Full Sail then.
Yeah. This one's the White House kitchen.
Yeah, definitely not a Macy's kitchen.
No, it is a White House kitchen. It is, everything has been purchased from industrial kitchen suppliers. Some of it used, some of it new. It is a giant space. Those are the four corners of the space to give you an idea of how huge that kitchen was. And again, I was given 4 walls and the equipment sitting in it, and everything else I brought in. So nope, it's not just Macy's. And then the center picture is the Oval Office, which we're at Tyler Perry, we're extremely proud of. It is something like an 85% replica, like the size is 85% of the actual Oval Office, something like that. And they actually use the historic White House plans to do that office.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. That's pretty neat cool that they got the actual plans in order to do that.
Yeah, they're actually historical archives. They're pretty easy to do. And, they're public records or historical archives. They pulled them and they scaled them down about 85%, something like that. And so a lot of the rooms are truly replicas of the actual White House. And I purchased, printed, and framed something like 350 pieces of art for the White House. Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
We have some more of your sets with the side to side comparison.
This is when I talk about going down the rabbit hole. That morgue wall is I had to, the wall with the drawers and the slides. They actually, you actually open them up and slide bodies in and out. But that was a project that took a while to find somebody who was willing to do what I needed to do, because most of the people I called didn't quite understand that all I needed was the facade and the doors and the drawers, and I didn't really need a refrigeration unit. and finally hit somebody who had actually done it before. And the guy said, yeah, we gotcha. We've done this before. And I worked with him, and it actually came in about 15,000 under budget. Because I found somebody who actually understood what we were trying to do. So the 2 pictures on the left are how it looks, unlit and before shoot. And of course the screenshot is of the actual shoot. But that's all real medical equipment. Most of it with Tyler Perry Studios, most of it's all purchases. We don't rent much when I work with them because it's ongoing series. And if the series breaks up, then they put it in the warehouse and we use it for something else.
Okay. So how is working for Tyler Perry on some of those shows different from working on some of the shows like what you're currently working on?
For one thing, the pace. It's very, very, very condensed. Mr. Perry will shoot out an entire set for the entire season. So if you have 14 episodes and the Morgue is in 6 of them, the Morgue will shoot for like 2 days straight, and it'll shoot every single scene the Morgue is in for the entire series.
Wow.
Where most shows shoot an episode at a time. It's very efficient. It's very crazy, and it's not unusual to shoot between 75 and 100 pages a day, which blows most people's minds. But when you realize you're not moving anywhere, you're not resetting, you're not relocating the camera crew, you were literally shooting in that one room all day long. So it's just, it all has to be ready before shooting begins.
Yes.
So where most shows you kind of do, you do the sets as they come up. Tyler Perry Studios, you do all of the sets before shooting begins. And then they'll have add-on sets like that attorney's office sometimes, if they have to rewrite something or they rework something. But in general, everything's got to be ready, because that way, if something happens, if they, if talent isn't available that day, or we can't accomplish something on the day we want to accomplish it, another set has to be ready to go, and has to be ready to go for every single scene for the entire season.
Wow.
So it's just a different way of doing things. But it can be, the pace can be really crazy.
All right.
And we get to buy everything. We don't rent hardly anything.
So like on Tyler Perry, you're mostly working at his location, which that big studio. But with the other productions that you've worked on, do you work a lot with the location scouts or any of those people that are finding the locations? No, we don't at all. We work once they've decided on the location, and once they kind of decide or narrow down locations, the decorator usually goes along, and when they do the scouts, the final scouts, and those are the days I get sort of a stream of consciousness set of text messages that'll go like, we're going to need 4 drapes, we're going to need this, we're going to need that, and I just keep a running list because I'm not expected to drop anything, go buy it that day, but it needs to be said at the time the walkthrough's done, because that way if I have a follow-up question, they can turn around and say, oh yeah, I'll measure that for you, or so there's a lot on scout days. There's a lot of, my phone blows up. How do you decide, or how do you know what's decided on what the set's going to be? How are you giving them that vision? Like you said on the one, you were just given the furniture and said, go fix it up and make it look like a law office.
Yeah, and that was with Dennis at Tyler Perry. And he said he wanted the feel to be sort of mid-century modern, and he told me who the character was, and kind of turned me loose from there. And if I had questions, he would say, I asked him about color of drapes and that sort of thing. But most of the time there's a pretty clear vision of what I'm about to do, and I'm filling the shopping list.
Okay.
Different places.
I know who Dennis is real quick, but tell everybody else who Dennis is.
Dennis is the decorator at Tyler Perry Studios, who actually retired this last summer during COVID.
Wow.
Dennis Donegan took me on when as a PA, and realized that I was really good at doing research. And he leaned on me. Plus, I knew a whole lot about the medical field, and we had to do an entire hospital. So I had to help him order like 8 hospital beds and all of the equipment that went in. So by the time I finished that, he kind of realized that he kind of decided I'd make a good buyer. So he's the one that, after I've worked with him for almost 5 years, all the way up until this last summer when he retired. So by the time he retired, I was being handed tasks like that attorney's office, because he knew at that point that I knew kind of what he did, what he liked, and that sort of thing. The longer you work with a decorator, a lot of the decorators like to work with the same buyers all the time, which is great because it's a two-way street, and I get to kind of understand, how that decorator thinks and what their preferences are and where they kind of like things. And so I have another decorator here in town, Christy Suffield, who I've worked with quite a bit as a second buyer, and she'll pull me in when if I'm between jobs. I can let her know, and she'll kind of write me into her budget to, kind of help her primary buyer, just give her some breathing space, because it can be a really overwhelming job for one person. So I work with her quite a bit, and she's the one I worked on the Gifted with, and I also worked on the Gifted, the Genius series, Aretha Franklin, and did a week with her when she was on Insatiable. And I met her originally on Star when I was working on Star. So, I've got some continuity with her on that.
We'll go back to these boards here. These
Yeah,
were from
these
the
are
Gifted, you
Christy's
told me.
boards.
Okay, Christy did these.
Christy
Very
did these
nice.
boards. Yes. So
Is this kind of standard? She just gives you the boards and says, this is what I'm sort of looking for feeling wise?
For Christy, I'm usually filling in stuff that the big pieces have already been done, because I'm a second buyer. So in this case, these pictures are actually the furniture they had decided on. So the big pieces were there. And then some of it's a vibe, but I knew that was the wallpaper they were using, and this was the pieces of furniture. And in this case, I was sent out, this is for the Gifted, and I was buying smalls and life layers and pulling in personality into each of the, these were all the apartments the mutants lived in. And the Gifted is about superheroes. So it was the mutant kids and their family were all in these apartments, and I got to kind of put their layers of personality in, and that was my part of it for about a month. I came in and did that sort of thing. That was a lot of fun. That show was tons of fun to work on.
What are smalls and life layers?
Okay, smalls are your small stuff. Dishes, bases, lamps, anything that isn't furniture, furniture, actually, it's anything that isn't the big pieces. If it's not furniture and rugs, then it becomes, it's literally all the small stuff we live with. And then life layer is the layer that you put in that makes you feel like a human being, or in this case, the mutants actually occupy the space. So when you look around your own home, it's the toothbrush by your sink, it's the toothpaste tube on the counter, it's the remote, the stuff that's cluttering your coffee table, the stuff that's by your bed, the lamp that you use to read, the things that are kind of personal that tells them that you are the human being who fills this space, or the mutant who fills the space.
What would you say is probably the most valuable skill or qualities that you've picked up on the job, and what have you brought to the job? Like, what's the most important thing that you've brought in as being a buyer?
I think two things that go hand in hand. I have a really broad kind of range of experience, both life and in jobs. And the other thing I brought into it was I'm always curious. I always want to know, I'm more than happy to talk to people about things I don't know anything about. And that's probably, especially in this job, is really important. because there's no way you're going to know everything about everything. And I have no fear of calling somebody else up and saying, okay, this is going to sound really dumb, but I need to know. And usually people are more than happy to share their world with you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What's one of your favorite memories from one of the jobs that you've been on?
Probably something that doesn't have anything to do with set dressing. I worked on the movie that's recently been released called Queen Bees. And when I worked on it, it was called Never Too Late. But it has a group of really amazing, lifelong talent. James Caan. Now I'm going to sit here and draw a blank on everybody's names. Jane Curtin, who I always loved. But it's this group. The storyline was about somebody who has to go into a assisted living because they had a kitchen fire, and it's how they get, how they kind of establish new friends and make new friends and start dating and all the things that you do when you're young, but you don't think of people doing when you're 80. But the best memory of that was being able to stand there one day, because it was a small crew and a small set, an independent film. I got to stand there and watch these lifelong actors do their job, and they were just amazingly professional and talented, and they loved working with each other. And so it had anything to do with set dressing that day, but to watch people of that caliber do their job was just astonishing. And
That's
it remains
cool.
one of my favorite memories.
Now, as a set dresser, are you usually on set compared to being a buyer? Like, which is your preferred role?
I'm usually never there. If we do our job right, we've moved on before talent ever hits the stage. And as a buyer, I'm rarely there unless it's to go take something that's very last minute. And usually what I'm doing is I'm texting somebody and saying, I'm pulling up in 5, and there's a set of hands to grab whatever it is I pull up with, and I'm hauling ass right back out again. Because if they're shooting, there's just not space for me to be around there. And plus I'm working on the next day's sets or the next week's sets or something. So, and set dressers usually are done too. The only person who is actually on set during shooting is the on-set dresser. And that's the one who stands by and resets between takes and, moves anything that, doesn't work out the way they want it to, and, kind of fluffs things up again and makes it, takes it back to one.
One of your shopping lists.
Yes, this is typical shopping list for me. And I occasionally just take pictures of them and send to my mother because she finds it amusing. But yeah, I on the right hand side is the list I start my day with. On the left hand side is the notes that come up in the course of the day, and the things that do not get bought that day get copied over to the next day. I don't throw anything away. I fold the page in half, roll the page over, and that way, if I ever, like this, in this case, there's a bunch of measurements on there. So if I had to go back and double check measurements, I would want them, like, I wouldn't want to throw the page away.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I have, by the end of a show, I have several notebooks full of fanned pages, but that's just that's my way of doing it. And then the other two are again, I was asked to do a set, and this was supposed to be a makeshift operating room in a basement. And I just hauled everything in there and dressed it as if I did 5 years work in an emergency room when I was in my 20s. So I kind of know what a room looks like after you've worked on an emergency. And I just basically went in and treated it that way, all the way down to the last thing I did was use the fake blood, squeezed it out on a paper towel and stomped it a few times onto the floor. So I left bloody footprints behind on purpose. Played really well on camera.
I imagine so. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it was kind of fun.
Brings us to a great question. You've had medical experience because you worked at the hospital and all here in Florida. So medical sets are a thing you have direct experience in. How are you go about buying for some of the sets that you've had no experience in at all?
I pull a lot of research. Usually I'm given some kind of idea of, what they want it to look like. And I'm working on recording studio right now. It's like the third time I've done this. First time I didn't have any idea, and I got a hold of somebody and just started asking questions. It's like, well, what would they usually have, and how many would they usually have, and what's normal? And again, most people are pretty open to talking about their kind of place in this world, but I do a lot of research, and that's the journalism side of me. And there's been a lot of times where I had no clue what I had to buy prison furniture and prison toilets. That's not in my, I don't know anything about prison toilets. I know more now than I did then because I've now had to buy them about 4 times. But yeah, prison toilets and prison furniture and beds and those tables that are bolted to the floor. And I had to do that.
With the recording studio, you said you called up someone and started asking questions. Who did you call up? Just like a recording studio or another buyer?
I actually started out talking to, I'm trying to remember who I talked to the first time. I knew somebody whose family member did live music, like mixed live music. Yeah. And so I asked her if her husband knew anybody who had mixed consoles for sale. And I didn't really know what I was talking about. So she put me in touch with her husband, and I talked to him for a little bit. He had me talk to somebody else, and somebody else had me talk to somebody else. And eventually I ended up being referred to this place in Vermont called Sonic Circus. And when they first told me that, I thought they were saying like circuits, like circuit breakers, until I called them up, and it was actually Sonic Circus, like 3-ring circus. And that person, David, from them, he's superb. And he was more than happy to he buys and sells entire studios. Like when somebody wants to renovate, put new equipment in, he buys all the used off of it and then sells the used equipment. And that's what he does. So he was really, really helpful. And since then he's done a number of, I bought a board from him for Star, and then which was like 4.5 years ago. It was like one of my first big things I bought right before I actually became a buyer. I researched and took care of that when I was working for Star as a set deck coordinator. And then since then I've talked to him a number of times, and he's actually done several other jobs in town. That was for he did both the Aretha Franklin movie and the series here in town. And the series, he got that job because Christy, who was the decorator worked with, wanted to work with him again because he was so superbly helpful. So, and of course, now when somebody says you need to buy a mix board, he's the first person I pick up the phone and call, because he's going to tell me what's realistic. He's going to tell me what, what they would have in that kind of studio. And there's a difference between a mixed board for live music versus a mixed board for a recording studio. And there's a difference in preference for somebody who's recording classical as opposed to somebody who's recording hip hop. And he can let me know all of that.
Very cool. Is that your usual research kind of method, going and asking somebody who asked somebody else, or is there some other? Is that
that's what I call going down the rabbit hole when I don't even know where to begin. But usually like grocery store shelving. I don't know anything about grocery store shelving other than what I know from being at the grocery store. So I called up somebody who knew something. I called up somebody who sold used grocery store equipment, and I started talking to them, and they were super helpful, and they taught me what how to ask for like what a gondola was, and how the shelves were put together. And I go in the day that all the shelves were delivered, and all the set dressers are all standing around going, "Come tell us how these shelves get put together." Thinking, how should I know how the shelves go together? So I got on the phone with the guy at the grocery store sales place who walked us through how to put them together, because it was actually a giant pile of metal with like no instructions. Because I guess if you buy grocery store equipment all the time, you know how it goes, but
Yeah.
we didn't. So,
Well, I assume that these don't have any actual refrigeration, right?
right,
So
they do not, because it would be too loud on camera.
So like what's with the fruit here that, would go bad?
They for some reason they insisted they wanted fresh fruit, and that was a physical impossibility because this was like in August.
Hmm.
And it wasn't even going to last a day. So I was pondering what to make, like what we could use to make it look like fruit. And they wanted watermelon and honeydew and pineapple and cantaloupe. They were really specific. I'm like, okay. I was thinking and thinking, and originally I thought about cutting up sponges because I don't know what, I thought that would work. And then I was at a Five Below or near a Five Below store, which is like a little discount, like Dollar Tree type thing. And they had giant boxes of pool noodles out on the sidewalk. Like I said, it says August. And I looked at those pool noodles and I thought, I can make fruit out of those. And actually it was really economical because they're like $1 a noodle. And so I bought a pink one, a green one, a yellow one, and an orange one. And we cut them up and filled them. And I bought kind of a milky white plastic container, so it wasn't like really clear. And that's what you see there are green pool noodles, pink pool noodles, and I think that's one of the yellow ones in the little. They were putting that together when I went and took pictures of that. They were still working on set dressing, because you can see there's a lot of empty space still on the shelves behind and all. And there is a lot of stuff in a grocery store.
Yeah.
I thought we would never stop buying stuff by the truckload for that place. We bought we went to wholesalers and bought cases of milk jugs and ice cream cartons. And yeah, it was overwhelming and never ending. That's one aisle. I think there's that grocery store has like 6 or 7 aisles in it. Yeah, it's big.
Wow.
We start with a big empty box. But I thought the fruit came out really good. For being cut up
for a Tyler Perry show then?
Yes. This is for Tyler Perry. In
so
fact,
this
Mr.
is a
Perry.
set that gets kept, or?
Yes.
Okay.
And what they do is, they rearrange some shelves, and the shelving can be moved pretty easily. They rearrange some shelves. They'll put up new graphics. They'll paint the stripe a different color. Grocery stores are grocery stores.
Yeah.
It's easy enough to rearrange it and paint it and put new lighting in and have it look like a completely different space. Yeah. Change the graphics, like where it says fresh food, which is kind of bizarre because that's actually frozen food, but whatever. I think that was before the graphics went in, but it would now be frozen food. If you changed all that and put milk and dairy, you could fill it full of milk jugs and butter boxes, and and it would start looking pretty quickly like a different space.
Yeah, or all TV dinners or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when we were students, you used to bring a lot of personal items in to dress our sets. Do you ever wind up doing that on any of these sets? Not like the long-term stuff, but do you ever go, I have that at home and I could just grab it from home?
Yeah, actually, when I was working on what became Queen Bees, we wanted a really pretty, for some reason, they definitely wanted a vibrant blue bowl for the kitchen table, and they wanted to put hydrangea in it. And it was just the time of year where everything we were finding was like pinks and purples, and it wasn't what the decorator wanted. And finally, I just turned around and said, "What color do you want?" She said, "Oh, like a bright Caribbean blue." And I'm like, "Okay, I have that at home on my dining room table." So I took that in and we dressed it in. And when the set was struck, she handed me it. I got the bowl back filled full of the hydrangea still. And then when I went and saw that movie, there is a scene where they're sitting at the kitchen table, and that's my bowl on the kitchen table. and with hydrangeas in it in front of them. But yeah, sometimes it's just like, you just go, yeah, I got that at home. I'll just go get it.
Do you keep a sort of stash now of items that I
No,
can't find?
no. Although we've been joking that we need a stash of double curtain rods because in the day of COVID, we are finding that the supply chain is kind of screwed up a whole lot of really bizarre off the wall things. And one of it being double curtain rods. And today I was at a store north of town, about an hour north of town. I said, I'm going to hit this store just in case they have stock that other stores don't. And I went in there and they were fully stocked. And I shot a picture of it to my decorator who said, oh my God, she said, buy them all. And I literally bought about 20 sets of long double curtain rods because we cannot find them in Atlanta right now. So
how has COVID kind of changed buying for you? Obviously the supply chain has been disrupted. So has it been more difficult to find everything, or has there been some stuff that's like weirdly overstocked in places and other stuff like the curtain rods?
There's not anything weirdly overstocked because I don't think anybody's got enough money to do overstocking. They're just not overbuying right now. And, they keep things sort of ebb and flow and people aren't buying a whole lot. But the supply chain has messed up restocking of some off the wall things. Like one day I needed computer mice, like basic computer mice.
Yeah.
There were like none on the shelves. Now it seems that has caught back up. Or for a while there, it was like, so it's weird stuff. And it's random. Like, it'll be bad stock one week of, harps for lamps, like lamp harps and finials you can't find anywhere, or nobody's getting them in. And then the next week you go and they've gotten them all in. And it's just like, there's no rhyme or reason to it. But it does change. What has changed is, well, we're still masking in Atlanta, of course. And for a long time there, traffic was much better, but now there's people on the road. It's like now everybody's back on the road and that isn't that way anymore. But yeah, it's just supply chain. And then the other thing is staffing. The stores are really, really understaffed. Their hours are sort of shortened a lot of the time. Like right now, I think Office Depot is back to like 9 to 6. And it used to be that's the place I could hit after I hit the other things in town that closed at 6. And it's random. Like you just show up and this sign on the door says this location now closes at 6. So it's like you can't rely on maps to tell you the hours of a store. And, so if I have to drive somewhere, I'll call and make sure that their hours are what their hours are. But staffing is an issue. Stocking is an issue. It's random stuff. IKEA is empty. Their shelves they can't get stock in. Their shelves are just wiped out.
Wow.
And so that used to be our place to go and get all kinds of things that we just can't. It's just not there. No. So yeah, it's made. The other thing is it's meant that when it comes to like furniture, it used to be lots of places had a lot of it in warehouses. But now everybody does all this online ordering. So the warehouse has more become a online ordering, like things move through for online ordering, but they're not there like to fill the shelves. So if you need something, you go in the same queue as online orders do. So, it used to be, we knew we could, call up Haverty's and they would be able to get, coffee tables out of the warehouse. That's no longer true. We get put in the same queue as everybody else who's online ordering, and things are back ordered sometimes, several months. Children's furniture right now, I think because most of it's imported, is next year sometime.
Wow.
Like if you want to buy a children's bunk bed set, good luck. You might be able to pick it up in March or April.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So how does stuff get reused set to set? Because some of these shows you're working on a studio set, but there's a lot of stuff that you're working like a movie does any of that get reused at all or no?
Well, if you're working on a movie, a lot of times you do more rental. You do
Okay.
a lot more rental unless there's something specific that's needed.
Okay.
And then they end up just having a sale at the end of it, or they work something out with the prop houses in town.
Mm,
The prop houses in town will do a bulk buy of everything from a show, and
okay.
they'll agree to take everything, which means, you know, they get a lot of stuff they have no use for, and it's their problem to sort it out. You know, and the show just literally pile it into great big Gaylord boxes, which are the big boxes that are 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot. They'll
Mm,
just pile them in, seal it up with plastic wrap, and it's up to the prop house to sort through and decide what's worth keeping and what needs to be pitched. And the prop house will do a bulk buy. They'll just come in and say, and I think they talk to each other and outbid each other on it. I think it's kind of like a mini auction. You know, they
okay.
both, you know, so, and sometimes a show will take a lot of something. There's a place in town called LCW that does a lot of
Mm,
technical type props. And LCW bought an entire show one time, knowing that they wouldn't have any use for, like, you know, the diner banquettes and tables and stuff. But they knew that there was a lot of technical stuff in that particular show. And so they bought the whole bulk, and then they did some horse trading with other prop houses in town and got rid of stuff they didn't want. So it's kind of, but that's what happens to that stuff. But if it's, you know, some shows will have their own sale, and usually they'll
mm,
advertise first to the people who worked on the show, second to the union, and then if it's big enough, they'll advertise to the public. But most of the time, they don't get to the public. There's just no point to it. You know, the public in general isn't going to buy most of what, you know, a lot of what we buy looks good on camera, but it's pretty beat up by the time it's been moved and drug up around town in a 5-ton truck. And yeah, but, you know, but prop houses buy and sell from a whole show, you know. And this show, we do a lot of rentals for all the locations, and we do
mm,
purchases for the sets.
okay.
So you just kind of divide it up that way. And then, you know, if they're going to, a set's going to break apart and not happen, then we shelve all that stuff. You know, it just goes onto a shelf full of, you know, smalls, a shelf full of linens, a shelf full of pillows. And then if you need something, you can, you know, pull it. The pillow's a pillow.
Yeah. Well, I've mentioned that you and I were both classmates together. So, and we went through Full Sail together. What's one of your favorite memories of Full Sail? Like, one of the best things you've learned from when we were working on all these sets together?
Well, one of the oddest things I learned that I didn't think we had to do, I remember the class sound for film.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to, like, we had timed skills. We had to set everything up for signal flow.
Yeah.
And do, you know, we had to put all the microphones up and plug everything in and get everything set up, and they were timed, and we're all a little, it was kind of I knew nothing about that. And so I was kind of freaked out about that class, and then got through it. Okay. Thought, well, I am never going to use that again. And the first, the first sort of free job I did here, I volunteered to work for somebody here in Atlanta, and I was going to be like a PA or something for him. And he said, well, I see that you ran sound for one of your college things. Would you run sound for us? And I'm like, it's not my forte, but I'll run sound for you. He had no one else who had any clue how to do it. So I ran sound for that. And it actually came out okay, all things considered. But then when I was working on Star, I ended up needing to get involved in helping them find a mix board. And because I understood signal flow, and I could enough to be able to ask the correct questions and understand the answers when I was trying to find the mix board, because of that, knowing that, having taken that class made it completely possible for me to connect with the person I was trying to ask questions of, ask reasonably intelligent questions, and understand the answer. And I ended up getting them what they really wanted, which was a SSL, which is a solid state vintage mix board. Long story behind that one. But I ended up getting them what they really, really wanted. And that that alone cemented my relationship with Christy and the entire team on Star. And that job and that time there has netted me probably 10 jobs since then.
Wow.
I mean, I've probably gotten 10 other gigs based on my time at Star. And a lot of the response I got out of people was because I was willing to learn enough about something that I knew this much about. And so it's an odd thing, but it's a really cool memory of the place. It's like, yeah, I got to, but I went into Full Sail determining that I was going to dump everything I could into every class I had and pull everything I could out of every class I had. And it has honestly made all of the difference in my career since then. I mean, absolutely has.
Yeah, I remember you running sound on a couple of our projects while we were in Full Sail.
Yeah.
Particularly that very first project we filmed together where you were running were you running the mixer and Billy was boom? I believe that was what happened. Yeah.
Mhm.
All I remember is the dead cat on your head.
Yes. I don't even know how that got to my head, but it's okay.
It was a long night.
Yes, it was a very long night. But, it's like, I think I ran sound a couple of times because nobody else would. And it wasn't that it was, it's just like, okay, nobody else will. And I am more than happy to learn. So, if you're out there and, students are in a class and you think I'm never going to use this, think twice. It could actually be the launching point of, it may be not what you want to do for your whole career, but it could really change your career. And in the case of mine, it really did. It made a huge difference. In fact, the Queen Bees, the production designer who was so thrilled with the fact I got that SSL board is the one who hired me to do Queen Bees.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it just keeps rolling.
Wow. Do you have any final advice for the students?
Other than the advice I just gave about.
Other than the advice you just gave, any other?
Yeah, jump yourself into it. Stay curious. Always be willing to ask a lot of questions. Keep a positive attitude. It's as much as we like to complain sometimes, don't complain, especially if you get to a set, because the person who hears you complain may be the person who determines whether or not you are or aren't going to get hired for the next job. Because as much as somebody might side with you if you're complaining right now, they're also going to be the first person who tells somebody else that they get tired of hearing you gripe. So I know it's a little bizarre thing, but it's like, keep a positive attitude. We all have to complain sometime. Find somebody that it's okay to complain to. Just because we all have to vent sometime when the day goes bad. But keep a positive attitude, throw everything you can into it, and don't predetermine where you think you'll end up, because I honestly thought I was going to do camera work, and I don't think I could be any happier doing what I'm doing than I am right now. I get paid to do make-believe on a daily basis, and it is so flipping fun. I can't even begin to. I mean, I collect a paycheck for doing make-believe.
Yes, you do.
And even on a bad day, I remind myself, I collect a paycheck for doing make-believe. When I was working on The Gifted, I was at a prop house that specializes in medical stuff. Yeah. And the Christy texted me and said, hi, while you're there, look around and see what you might think of that we could use to scatter through the hallways when the mutants escape the psych ward. I said, okay. And a few minutes later, I texted her back some ideas, and she said, oh, those are all great ideas. I think we have all that stuff, in our stock and supply here, and we can do all that from here. Those are awesome ideas. Thank you. And I stood there a second, and I thought, okay, I just had to tell them stuff that, I had to use my creativity to figure out what would be useful to scatter through the hallways when the mutants escape the psych ward. And so I picked up my phone and I texted Christy back again, and I put best period job period ever period. And I still say that. It is absolutely the best job ever. And I've had a lot of jobs. So yeah, I get paid to do make believe. And it really is fun.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like fun, and it's not a spot that you thought, because I remember you were always on as set decorator in most of our projects and production designer, and you always loved doing all the architecture stuff. And
Yeah.
you always said your real estate experience tied into that,
Right.
which yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you've had
Yeah.
a long and varied list of careers that all of those experiences have kind of tied into where you are now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And so is all of what I did at Full Sail. I mean,
Yeah.
I got handed a set of plans recently and I had to figure out, you know, elevations and look at this and look at that. And if I hadn't done Vectorworks, it wouldn't have made a bit of sense. And I didn't have time to ask somebody to show me how. So I
Yeah.
was thrilled that I spread it all out, looked at it and thought, oh, okay, I know what I'm trying to do here. You know, and Vectorworks is another one of those classes. Like, wonder if I'm going to ever do Vectorworks again. It's like, maybe not, but you better know how to read a plan fast.
Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
This was Tanya Webb. I'm Jessica Cobine, lab instructor here at DCBS. Night, everybody.
Good night.
I'm going to stop the recording and then
Cool.
we'll still be on.